Please do feel free to answer or ask your questions in Hindi or English. Many of us are proficient in both, and we'd be happy to help with translations in case someone would require some assistance. We do have ample time dedicated to questions and discussions at the end of the session, so please try not to interrupt during the presentation. But of course, if something does come up and you'd like to make a comment or share a thought whilst the presentation is going on, feel free to kind of write that out in the chat box. And it's usually a lot easier if you could introduce yourself and your organization along with your question or your comment. Next slide, please. Just a quick look at a very brief agenda for today. We're at the introduction, the context setting right now, after which I'll hand it over to Dr. Prabhakar and his team, and they can introduce themselves, their project, and walk us through their presentation. As I mentioned, we have 35 minutes, which is ample time to kind of get into question answers, open discussions, and just discuss what all we learned in today's session. So definitely do hold on till then. Next slide, please, Rohan. So I'll just take a few minutes to reintroduce to some of you, and also for the first time introduce to some of you CoreNet, the idea of what these coffee hour sessions are. CoreNet, or the COVID-19 Research Network, is an effort to build a community of practice to foster exchange and collaboration among research organizations, gathering information on issues relevant to the COVID-19 pandemic in India. And the CoreNet has goals are twofold. One is to maximize impact for key stakeholders and communities by getting relevant synthesized evidence and insights in a timely and coordinated manner, as well as bring ethics and equity to all the research practices with which all the members are involved in. Next, please, Rohan. Right. As of today, since about late May is when sort of CoreNet was conceptualized and sort of began its journey, we have more than 40 member organizations working in 23 different geographies who've been onboarded to the network, who have submitted over 65 different research projects, which you can view on the CoreNet web platform. I would just request Rohan or Maya to just paste the link onto the chat box, which people can explore after the session. We have about more than 160 individual members in our Slack workspace, and on an everyday basis, we sort of share information, research projects, invites to different events, and just kind of engage in informal conversation as well. We've also, as of 2 weeks ago, formalized and set live 2 of our working groups, the first on nutrition and food security, and the other one on frontline health workers. If any of you would like to be included in some of the upcoming meetings, or just would like to be a lot more involved with in either of these 2 working groups, please do let us know in the chat box, or feel free to write to us at hello@corenet.in. Next slide, please. Right, and these coffee hour sessions are scheduled every Thursday from 4 to 5, and they've been sort of conceptualized as being a space for all network members to convene and informally discuss, share, and learn from other members. And often people are network members are sharing studies, methods, findings from their projects, and as well as challenges that they might have faced during the course of their work. All these sessions are co-created with the network members. So if any of you do have a project you'd like to share, or some sort of ideas you'd like to discuss, feel free to reach out to us at hello@corenet.in, and we'd be happy to kind of discuss and curate a session for the rest of the network. And without further ado, I'd hand it over to Dr. Prabhakar to share with us a working version of the Health Heat Map of India, which is an open access platform for aggregation, curation, and visualization of health indicators of India. So Dr. Prabhakar, over to you and your team, and please feel free to introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having us and our team in the CoreNet session. First, I hope all of you have your coffee in your hands. Coffee will take you through the talk as well. So let me just share the screen. Give me a moment. I hope my screen presentation will be fine and you can see it. You can see my screen? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so while the current talk and the current work that we've done may not seem directly related to the COVID pandemic that we're going through, we've been thinking about this for the last 2-3 years and discussing and seeing how to kind of conceptualize it, how to get it operational and things like that. It definitely has impact on COVID and health in general, public health in particular, and the health of the country and its health delivery systems. So in that sense, there's a very, very strong relationship with COVID, especially infectious diseases and things like that. This has a very, very strong relationship because all infectious diseases need very careful monitoring, very careful management, and very careful containment of spreads. I'm today going to be talking about Health Heat Map of India, an open data platform for warehousing public health data of India, which has been kind of motivated by the anchored at MetaString Foundation. Now, just to give you a background, very, very brief background of our, and our motivation, our conviction and commitment is to open data as a public good. We think open data has tremendous value and more data must be in the public domain. It will come. We are already seeing this movement. And when data is in the public domain in various fields, education, public health, environment, literacy, etc., we think it really has big impacts on society and democratic societies. It enables research. Researchers can look at the data, do analysis, and go ahead. It helps data-driven planning. So planning can be better informed. You can have evidence-driven planning exercises. Essentially, on the people side, it democratizes knowledge. You can see this in the COVID experience as well. A lot of people seem to be kind of following and knowing and having some say on what COVID does. There's, of course, a lot of misinformation as well, but there's very, very good information as well. So there are lots of sites that have come up, put up by scientists and educators and the public, which people are kind of looking at and trying to educate themselves. So it democratizes knowledge. I think it's very, very important. It engages the citizenry. So you can have a talk and you can discuss on public health and various issues of public health. Finally, and very, very importantly, we think open data is very important for transparency and accountability. We want to know what the governments are doing, what the state is doing, what is the state of our neighborhoods, what's the state of my immediate environment, where is it bad, what is happening. Transparency and accountability is very, very important in today's society. Why we are on this journey, and it's very, very simple. Open data is a public good. That's what we're working on. Our experience has been with building an open collaborative platform in the field of biodiversity. We've been doing it for over a decade. And this is what we have, open and free access to India's biodiversity information. Now, essentially what we do in this, and this has some relevance to the health heat map area as well, we have split up the whole platform. We are building a platform. And a platform is a generic platform. We are now in the process of splitting up the platform into what we call microservices, little modules, little functional modules that can be put together in various ways to do various other things. For example, some of the modules of the India Biodiversity Portal will be used and are being used by the Health Heat Map. So what we have a species page module, which is one page for every species of India. That's our aim. There are about 125 to 130,000 species in India, and we want to have one descriptive content for every species in the country so that people can look at it and understand the biology, its distribution, its reproductive, its status, etc., etc. We have an observation module, which is essentially a crowdsourced citizen module, and it's been quite an experience building this because crowdsourcing, citizen participation, citizen science has not really been very, very active in India. We're now seeing a big takeoff in citizen science. So crowdsourcing is an important function, and we've been working with this, and we have some idea on what are the levers and what are the keys and how to build a public participatory platform. We have a fully featured map module in the India Biodiversity Portal, which is being leveraged by the Health Heat Map. We have a documents module, which is very, very important because there's a lot of gray literature, documents, reports, etc., all over the place. And if they're relating to biodiversity, you must be able to kind of put them into a biodiversity portal and in some sense cross-reference a research report, a status report, a government document, etc., cross-reference with the species biodiversity information system. So we have a documents module. Of course, users are very important, users, roles, permissions, and you need a pretty intricate user management system where you track people's activity, you kind of encourage people to kind of collaborate and participate, know more, you announce their presence, etc. We have a discussions module for regular discussions that can take place. It really has not taken off, and that is the biodiversity portal. I also want to kind of point out the organizations that run it. So essentially, for the last 10 years, biodiversity portal development has been anchored by Strand Life Sciences, which is an offshoot of the Indian Institute of Science. It's a corporate business making unit, but we have a small, we've given ourselves a small space in Strand, in the business making unit for public funded projects. So when we operate these public funded projects, professionals come in and work on these public funded projects. And the rule with the senior management or the agreement with the management of the business is that we will run this at cost. So we will only do public funding for people and pay the salaries of the people who are involved in that particular project. That's one particular management business decision that we made with Strand Life Sciences. The second thing that we made was that all code that is developed as a part of a public funded project will be in open source, will be open, will be public, and it will work on open public data for the public good. So with these two principles, somehow Strand has managed to shelter us and our team inside the company for now over 12 years. We started this in 2008. So till today, it's been supported inside Strand, and that gives us tremendous continuity. I just want to kind of mention it. The repository or the intellectual property of the India Biodiversity Portal is held by MetaString Foundation, which is a not-for-profit foundation. I just need to keep track of time. Okay. So Health Heat Map, we think it's an enabling tool for digital health. This was in collaboration with conversations that we've had with Professor Narahari of the Indian Institute of Science, who are also kind of have a big project on digital health and healthcare and health heat maps. Now, we discussed 4 different components of it. One is here, Health Heat Map, just to get the data together, provides rich visualizations and insights into the patterns of health in India, discover anomalies, discover opportunities for timely intervention, prioritizing healthcare interventions, public health as a resource optimizing aspect, and things like that. Then once the data is available, there are exciting research and R&D questions that one can ask. One can ask questions about the spread of diseases. One can ask questions about the state of health and relationship with the environment, and various research questions. One can also do, as examples, one can also do nice modeling. You can do games, you can do equilibrium studies, you can do dynamic programming, you can do various other things. But essentially what our focus and our focus at the MetaString Foundation has been really to do the grunt work and to do the kind of foundation of collecting all the data, warehousing it properly, and putting it out so that other people can use it for whatever they want to use it for. We are not into research and R&D. We are into aggregating, curating, and storing data. I want to make that very, very clear. Okay, what are the specific objectives? We want to aggregate open public health data from various sources into an integrated framework. An integrated framework is very necessary. A data model is very necessary. We'll talk about it a little later. Build a flexible and extensible data model to ingest data at various temporal and spatial scales. When you're talking about getting data from various sources, they'll all come in all shapes, size, and color. Now, to get all these different shapes, size, and color, to get it together and to kind of symphonize or organize themselves, you need a nice data structure. And we'll see what is the data structure that we use. We want to, of course, interlay it with various other health-related data like social, economic, environmental layers, which we think are very, very important in health outcomes, in health delivery systems, in the state of health of a population. We really want to provide very, very simple ability to kind of explore and analyze the data. We essentially want to do something where you can query the data, you can cut, slice, and dice the data. And we think this is really very, very important. Once you can do that, everything else is secondary. We want to build some very basic visualizations and analysis tools to explore the health data. And finally, we want to make sure that the data can be taken out, can be cut, sliced, diced, and one particular section can be taken out for people to do whatever they want. And this is also very, very important. You want to redistribute the data. You want to liberate this data from the shackles of siloed government or various other places. Okay. Open data as a public good. There is official government statistics. There are thematic aggregators like the CDC or various people who collect specific disease and outbreak information. There are many in India as well. And there are global organizations like WHO and World Bank which collect data on a global scale and publish them as open data. In India itself, we looked at it, and I think about 30 or 40 different sources of data were listed, and they're all of different shapes, size, colors, extent. One will talk about only one particular district or one particular taluka or one particular state. So there is huge patchiness in all this data. However, if you look at the public data majorly in India, we've listed out a few here. We've listed out its description. We've listed out its periodicity. Many of you would know this, the SRS, the HMIS, the NFHS, which is most commonly and widely used, which is really very, very comprehensive. The district level household and facility survey. You have the IDPS, which is IDSP, which is a very, very interesting data source. It provides weekly reports of outbreaks, and it's been published in 2009. And it has been, it's a source that is very, very important and usable in many places. Then there is, of course, census. There is livestock census. There's animal census, animal health census, which may be very, very important. Animal health and animal health surveys, and they're all completely open. They don't seem to be wanting to cover it up. It's all very open and easily available. And these may be very, very important for zoonotic diseases, for diseases where there is a certain relationship between natural populations and human populations, like COVID is. Okay. What is the framework? We need a nice framework, and this is very, very important to understand. Now, the way we did this is we got all the data sets together, we pored over the data sets, looked at it and see what is the commonality, how to organize it, because essentially what you want to do is you want to grab any data source, you want to look at it and say, and analyze it and say, okay, this concerns these two, three different things, put them into a bucket, disaggregate it, put them into a bucket, and combine it the way you want to give it to the end user. That is essentially the game that you want to play. So you need that basic disaggregation and putting it in a nice framework very nicely together. So what did we do? Since we were interested in public health, we had this idea of a health indicator, and this is commonly used by WHO, by the World Bank and various other people. So they have a whole series of indicators of health. It could be maternal mortality, it could be nutrition, it could be immunization, it could be pregnancy in hospitals, etc., etc. We called each of these things as an indicator. And what we did, we further disaggregated it into a data value. So each data value is associated with an indicator. These indicators are categorized, and we did a very basic ontology, if you like, of these indicators. What is a theme? What is a sub-theme? We can even expand this, and it's flexible. We can expand this so that it allows you to kind of explore and look at it and say, I want to look at maternal health, and where do I go? We need a framework for metadata to allow storing the information about each individual indicator. What is the indicator about? How was it collected? What is the sampling efficiency? How periodic is it generated? What are the definitions of the data collection mode, etc., etc. So all that will go into what is called metadata. It is static for an indicator for a source. The data being aggregated will be of varying granularity, and we need to kind of handle this in terms of geolocations and time spans, and can have several other gender dimensions like gender, settlement types, urban, rural, and things like that. So these urban, rural, gender types are secondary, but what we thought was we should disaggregate it on the basis of a geolocation. So each data point we talk about as what is the health indicator and what is the area that it kind of concerns with. Okay, so this is a list of the health indicators: infectious diseases, child health. Let me just quickly go through it so that I have time for you people for us to engage together. child health, adult health. We've got sub-themes of each of them, and we have a number of indicator themes that we've kind of put out in the first cut of the Health Heat Map portal. This can be expanded. Like I said, it doesn't take me much to add one more sub-theme, to add one more theme if required, but we need to be judicious in it. We can't let it go the way system tags go. We have to organize it because we need an ontology, we need a vocabulary for all this. So these are the first cut of the ontology and vocabulary that we've done. You may be able to suggest more and different themes and ontologies. We need to kind of look at it. Health infrastructure, we have one for demographic social development. The number of indicators in each is put out here. Now, let me just rush through this, but essentially what we need to do is data comes in different types and forms and shapes. So we need to have what is called an ETL pipeline, which is you extract the data, and sometimes they're in PDFs. Sometimes they could be even in written, handwritten scroll. Sometimes they can be in spreadsheets. And these are non-liberated data in steel. You need to take them out and liberate them. So you need to extract the data. You need to transform them because they have to fit into the data model. And then you need to load them onto a platform. So this is the ETL process. And we've done the ETL process. For example, if you look at IDSP data, I'm sure all of you know, IDSP data is in the form of PDF files. And how do you get anything out of it? How do you enumerate it? How do you analyze the data? How do you distribute the data? You have to get that data, you have to do grunt, you have to convert it and make it in a form that has a health indicator and geolocation framework. The functionality, what we is something that I want to talk about very briefly again. Essentially, what we want to do is we want to put everything on a map, on a spatial platform. And we believe that the spatial platform is a very, very good organizational rubric for this kind of data. You may not be able to kind of put things like a stock market change on a spatial platform. But things like this, things which are rooted in a locality, people and things like that, it's a good idea to put it on a spatial platform. So at the backbone, at the base of this whole health heat map is a WebGIS platform where things can be loaded. Data and spatial data can be loaded not only on the health aspect, but also on other aspects like sensors, economic aspects like geology, like soils, like climate, etc., etc. So imagine if you put all this data together in one location and you get all these different multi-variables on one location, the power that we'll have. We will build and go on expanding the visualization engine better and better and better. And there are very, very nice, open, nicely available visualization available. We believe with this, 90% of the user needs must be met. If you give them good visualization, good way to cut, slice, and dice, and good way to look at the data that they've kind of taken off, we think it will be very, very good. We have a show and tell. Would you like to kind of see the portal with on a 5-minute demo? Let me ask the people.
Yes, that would be great, Dr. Rajgopal. It would be great if we can see it.
Okay. So next is the road ahead. But Akshay, can you share your screen if you've got it all set up and do a 5-minute demo, Akshay, if you don't mind? Akshay?
Yeah, I've just tried to share my screen. I hope the portal...
Let's be brief. Yeah, let's be brief so that the participants can talk.
Your screen is visible, Akshay.
Yeah, so Prabha, shall I go ahead? Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so this is the home page of the portal, which I'm just showing you. Actually, this you can see this yourself if you just go to healthheatmapindia.org. On the portal right now, we have 3 main pages. One is a deep dive page where we display all the data that's available in the platform as of now on a map, and then there's a dedicated page for infectious diseases, which is data coming from the integrated disease surveillance platform program, which Prabha was just mentioning. We scrubbed a lot of PDFs and obtained them. And then there's a composite index page where we kind of combine some indicators and try to get derived scores for various districts and try to rank them in different ways. So I'll just go through them very quickly. So this is the deep dive page, which we can reach from the navbar. So there's a map, and on the left side we can see the various indicators, the ontology that Prabha was describing. Under each theme we'll have sub themes, and then within them we'll have different indicators listed. So social development, adult health, health services. So if I were to open one, so if I want to say, for example, see the breastfeeding children age 6 to 23 months who are receiving adequate diet, the percentage of that, which is health indicator from National Family Health Survey 4. If I had to show it on the map, I just have to add it to the map, and then it gets shown up. So there's a small tool here to see which indicators have been added. So for example, if I want to add one more, it just gets stacked on top. Once if you want to see a different layer, we can just reorder the stack and then hide them, show them, things like that. Also, what we are going to build right now is a way to see this together. So for example, if you want to compare two indicators, for example, let me just choose diabetes on the left side, and then I want to choose obesity on the right side. So this kind of a multi-port view we are developing, in the process of developing right now, but I'm just showing you a demo with 2 windows open. But we can see that this kind of view, we can clearly see some patterns emerging, and then some places where, for example, because I've loaded blood sugar level greater than 140 on the left side and obesity, men who are overweight on the right side, there are some places where there is a clear match on both the maps, but then there are some places where there's no correlation, or it looks like there is diabetes but there's no obesity. So these kinds of things can open up a lot of research questions. And then of course, like Prabha mentioned, we can add layers from different data sources. So for example, this is pulling in layers from biogeographic zones of the country. So we can visualize that on top of the other data. So similarly, we can add as many layers as we want. And if we just want to download or see the raw data that's behind it, we can switch to the table view, and then we'll be able to see what data has gone into the map. So that is also available. So very quickly moving to the infectious disease page. So this is data from the IDSP data source, which we have passed it from PDFs and put it in a database like Prabha described. So I can choose the date frame. So the data there is available from 2010. So if I were to just open all the dengue cases from 2010 till 2020, this is just a bubble plot which shows, and this is just states. We have divided it across states now. Say if you want to see only, because we are in Karnataka, at least we are in Karnataka, so I'll just choose Karnataka, and then you can see the district level data, and again we can switch to the table to see the raw data that is being plotted. And then the third interesting page is the composite index page. So here what we have done is we have tried to aggregate multiple indicators together to form some sort of a scoring for districts. And this is inspired by the work of Niti Aayog. They had tried to come up with a scoring for the aspirational districts program, where they were doing a scoring, a normalization of multiple indicators, and then doing an average, a weighted average, to get to score districts and figure out which districts needs more effort and more investment. So similarly, we have also done a similar thing. We can so I've put 4 indicators into this. Households using improved sanitation, households using clean fuel, children aged 12 to 23 months who have received BCG, and breastfeeding children who are receiving adequate diet. So with these 4 indicators, this is how the states are. There are some North Indian districts which are doing not so good, and then there are some districts here in the north, in the south, and in the extremes who are doing well. So the same we can see in a table form, so that if you want to see the raw data behind, and if we just want to change the indicators that go into the scoring, we can just add them or delete them. So I'm just going to add a few more indicators, and then we can see how things change and how the scores change and things like that. So these are the 3 pages. I think since we are running short of time, I'll just stop doing and you can ask questions. Or maybe Prabhakar has to finish his slides.
I have 2 more slides. Let me just finish it. Akshay, can you stop presenting?
Sorry.
Yeah, so all this has been built over the course of, we started sometime last year, and sometime in April, May, June, July, or rather much later actually, last year. And in about 6-8 months, we've managed to collect all the data and put out this particular thing. It's just it's a first version. There's a lot to be done, and this is just a first version. I thought we should kind of take a look at it and then see the way ahead. If the community thinks there is value, I think we should go ahead. Otherwise, fail early. The road ahead: curate and aggregate and grow health data in a targeted manner as well as opportunistically. We should be open. The data model allows you to be open to opportunistically get data. There is certain data in Karnataka which may be in better shape, in better, more granular, and in different aspects of health, leprosy, for example. So we should be able to kind of take that data and put it in. So we should expect patchiness in the data. We should expect gaps in the data and things like that. And we, looking at it, we will know these gaps. At least it will spur people to fill the gaps or question the data and things like that. We need to allow public health professionals to contribute. For example, there is a program in BR Hills that's been running, which have very, very detailed data on public health on the tribal populations in those areas. We'd like to get that data in and put it out. So, for one particular area of tribal health, you could have a huge lot of data on maybe mental health of the tribal community. We'd like to facilitate crowdsourcing, but this is not going to be, we've been racking our brains on this. How do you facilitate crowdsourcing by a person? What does the person get in return? How do we kind of allow people to kind of put in some information which is into the system and get some benefit onto it? We need to get a certain key for it. But if we get crowdsourcing going, it will far overpower all the other information that we have. We need to aggregate social, economic, and environmental layers with spatial reference. We need to provide interfaces to directly ingest data. Somebody should be able to very quickly import and ingest data. We need to integrate with other public spatial data sets. There's a huge lot of, for example, global population data is available at maybe 5 kilometer grid. There are lots of these international global data products coming out, essentially out of satellite image data, light sensing data, and things like that. We need to integrate that, and they're all in the open data realm. So we need to integrate those data sets. We'll have a very powerful system if we can really integrate all these data sets into one place. Once you have the data, we should be very, very clear on what we want to build. We want to build rich visualizations and very simple analysis tool. Build and configure grid-based output for multi-layer data. You should be able to say, I want a grid of, say, 1 kilometer, and I have these 20 layers. Dump the data out to me so that I can take it out in Stata or in some other software or statistical tool and analyze it and see what the hell the data reveals. So the ability to provide data in a format that researchers can use will be very, very valuable, and a grid-based output may be a good thing to try. Finally, there are opportunities, there are challenges. opportunities for definitely better health deliveries and better health outcomes, opportunities to detect spatial patterns in public health status. Cancer, for example, what is the spatial distribution of cancer? Is there any relationship between pesticide use and cancer? Because we believe that there's a lot of cancer in the intensive agriculture areas of the country. Is this really true? Is it a detection error? What is it? We need to ask these questions, and once you look at the spatial data and put them together, we think some of these questions can be kind of answered. Essentially, the platform will survive if users appreciate the product and use it. We need a group of stakeholders. We need people who use the data and think that it is valuable and support this whole enterprise. Finally, of course, we need resources and support for data archiving and curation, which requires a lot of effort and not very glamorous and engaging for many. I mean, people may be researchers, they do a lot of nice things about research, but data archiving is grunt. Data archiving is very, very careful curation work. And we think we at least have the, we'd like to kind of do this if the society wants us to do it. I'll stop here and questions and answers, please. And my team, our team, Akshay, you met and heard him. Varnita leads the technology team. Ravi Chalam leads MetaString Foundation. Pradeep Toma did the user interfaces for the portal. Vijay Chandru, who has been the mentor and the guiding principal, and myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rajgopal. Maybe we can, maybe you could, yeah, now we can see your face better. I think that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. It was really, really good to see the quick run through. We're all going to look through it in a lot more detail. There are a few questions, but I also noticed Dr. Gautam Menon, he was on the call. I don't see him. Yeah, he is here. Dr. Menon, I was wondering, so Dr. Menon presented his Bharat Sim project to the CoreNet members a couple of weeks back, and we were wondering if you had any quick thoughts to share.
No, I'm just a huge admirer of this effort. I think it's a fantastic job. And sort of one issue that I see in linking it with the things that we do is exactly how to extract correlations from the data. I mean, what the correlation between being overweight and being diabetic. Once you sort of spread it out like that at the individual level, you can have 50% overweight and 50% diabetic, but they need not be the same people in which. So this is, I think, an issue when connecting what the sort of data that you gather and put in place with the sort of agent-based way in which we're thinking about it. So at least I think the zeroth level information is there, but that I see as being a deeper problem that you can only solve with additional surveys that look at the population. But it's fantastic work. I mean, it's really, this is going to be the core of much of the data that we'll use in our models as well. So I'm a great admirer.
Prabhakar, if I may, this is Vijay. Yeah, I just want to mention to Gautam that, one thought that we have is, of course, to bring in the capabilities of a statistical package like R into the platform so that you could actually be able to run scripts and do various correlation analysis or any other type of statistical analysis that you'd like to run on the data. So that's one powerful way of actually, without having to leave the platform, you can also run some analytics. So that is something that we are discussing for the roadmap.
So Gautam, how would you suggest, in very briefly, how would you suggest we handle this? Unless you get individual level data, you can't really say the same individual is diabetic and has high sugar.
Yeah,
right?
no, I agree with that. So I think the only thing is you have to supplement it with some local small surveys and look at individual survey data where you can actually look at individuals that have both of these. But I see that as being the step that is really needed to connect that to the more individual based way in which we're thinking about it. But that's a sort of harder problem.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Menon. Dr. Rajgopal, there are a few more questions. So Romit's asking, what are your thoughts on how data crowdsourcing can be incentivized, perhaps reflecting on your experience from the India Biodiversity Portal?
it's a hard problem. We've been thinking about how to do this in various ways. I don't know what will work, but if we get the recipe right, we think it will be a great source. For example, wondering whether people would want to know what facilities are available in the health infrastructure. People who want to I don't know whether we should go into ratings and things like that. It's a hard problem on really individual level crowdsourcing. It's also a question of personal data and things like that. I've been thinking about it for 1 or 2 years, and I haven't really got a good solution. If somebody throws up something, I'd be very happy to listen to it and see what it is. I don't know what really will work. And our experience with the India Biodiversity Portal is that we should try a few things and keep monitoring it and keep adjusting and evolving as we go along. That's my impression. Would you have some ideas, anybody in the audience, on how we can crowdsource data? For example, let me give you another example that the distribution of medicines and sale of drugs across the country has a geographical location, and this data is somewhere being collected by the drug administration and things like that. If that is openly available, then we will know what kinds of medicines are being used there and possibly infer diseases. The range of possibilities are infinite. We need to really go on this journey together and then see what will work, what doesn't work, try a few things and then move on. That would be my call on it.
Sure, and Ms. Sunita is also asking, she's mentioning that, Sunita, you're there, you can ask yourself.
Great. Hi, Dr. Prabhakar. Thank you so much for your presentation. I hope you can hear me. It's totally fascinating, and my colleagues and I have also been thinking about how do we, really open up data for reuse, because there's so much value that resides in data, and a lot of times data just get collected for a single user and for a single use case. So it's a hard problem. But one of the things that we've been thinking about is, and we're beginning to experiment with CoreNet as well, which is, are there specific research questions or programmatic questions or policy questions that you need to actually combine multiple data sets in order to be able to answer? No single researcher or individual or group can answer that question with just the data that they have. They need to integrate multiple sources of data. And I'm wondering if those kinds of use cases can be thought of with the data that you've already brought together, because that's how you start to demonstrate that there's value here. And there are very specific kinds of use cases that are available to people. And then I think that can incentivize further contributions.
Yeah, a very good question. Infectious diseases is a very, very classic case where there are correlates to the environment, there are correlates to rainfalls, there are correlates to surface water availability and things like that. And this is, I think, a slightly easier problem to solve if IDSP data is nicely available at the village level. Because the other kind of data, environmental data, land use data, things that we are a little more familiar with is available. And it may be possible to do a small little prediction of risk landscapes for infectious diseases like dengue, malaria, known cycles of infectious diseases. Of course, unknown cycles of infectious diseases will hit us, and the only way we can do better in things like COVID and things like that is once it hits us, we have a response team that does a better job of it. Anybody else in the audience who would like to chip in and talk about this? I think it's an important question.
There are a couple of more questions, Dr. Rajgopal. So Prerna Makar is asking about similar efforts around the world that you consider to be benchmarks, and what are your plans for engagement with users of this health data as you build this out further?
So there is the DHIS system that we did look at, and it's very, very common and prominent in Africa, where public health reporting institutions report on a DHIS platform, report on a platform for aggregating health. Many of these are government efforts on an effort by a group like ours, a civil society group and things like this. I have not seen too many, although I know of one person who's been doing it as his agenda to aggregate all this data. But given the health data and statistics in this country, I think we need to spur the society to give importance to health data. So I don't know of any great effort except for DHIS, which is a government system, and in many other countries it's the government that kind of keeps all this data and manages them and puts them out in the public. Chandru?
I think
Akshay has something.
Yeah, I would just add WHO's Global Health Observatory to that list, along with World Bank data. This thing.
Yeah, actually, Sunita has put something in the chat, and I think a model certainly to look at is Synapse.
Yeah.
Of course, that is not necessarily government. It's in fact it is an NGO effort, and they started out with a lot of focus on biological data, and of course now it's a much broader platform. So in fact, I've just heard some presentations on some of their work with COVID and so on. So there are some models that we can try to emulate. Of course, their resource base is a little bit different from how we've been working. So I do think there is.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned Synapse because I actually met them in Delhi at the Gates Foundation meeting. They were there, and it's a nice open source, open data platform, and these are good. Yeah. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned Synapse. Just
The other question, there are two connected questions, one from Prerna and from Sapna. The plan for engagement with users of this health data, and then how can researchers get useful outputs for research?
Yeah, so Chandru, so we are kind of engaging with the Indian Institute of Science Digital Health Group. We are trying to see if we can kind of work with them and build production grade platforms for the data. Chandru, you want to come in?
Yeah, I think of course the IISc initiative is just about starting, so it's still early stages, but one of the ideas is if we can use IISc as the anchor, then the access to many data sites will become a lot easier. Also, we're IISc is in the process of setting up a technology innovation hub under the Department of Science and Technology's ICPS mission, and that group will also have something for data. It's actually called Data Setu. It's basically just starting. I think the hub was set up this week actually, and so again there may be a partnership that can develop there with them. But these are some of the early explorations.
So Akshay is a medical doctor who's been one of the persons who's kind of got the data, put them all together, and in fact even done the technology of building the backend for the platform. Akshay's been talking to a few public health groups, and he's kind of well versed. Akshay, you want to add the BR Health's Prashant group and your conversations with them?
Yeah, so one of the main things in health is that whoever is trying to do secondary research relies on these data sources that we have already curated itself as their base for doing research. And usually people also add their own primary data to the secondary sources to draw correlations and find new insights. So there are people from Institute of Public Health and public health researchers whom I've personally been collaborating with on some of these things. Essentially the thing is like Sunita was mentioning about finding the right questions which can be answered with these data sources, or vice versa, finding the right data to answer the right questions.
So the other thing is, Ravi, you want to come in? This is really a part of the National Biodiversity Mission. So we've been talking to people in the zoonotic area, zoonotic diseases, studying zoonotic diseases. There's a One Health program. Ravi, you want to come in and talk about the national mission and how we've been talking to researchers there?
Yeah, I mean, this is, of course, still very early days with the national mission. It's the National Mission on Biodiversity and Human Well-being. So it's deliberately, positioned as a relationship between Indian society and the environment. And an important program there is Biodiversity and Health, one half of which is dealing with medicinal plants and traditional knowledge, and the other one which is dealing with One Health. And it just coincidentally seems to overlap with the current travails all of us are facing. So it's got a bit of a boost, but this whole effort is been in this 1 year preparatory phase. So this has also got some traction. Initially, there was a little diffidence saying, oh, health, how does it fit with biodiversity? But that clarity has been given by other sources than our own work, just that the pandemic has brought it home. But I think it is going to depend really on how much the government is going to push this forward in terms of formal investment. It's seen as 2 phases of 5 years each. We're still going through the rigmarole of government approvals. But it has 7 programs, all of which will work together. It has a national footprint. And at least at this point of time, the budgets are fairly reasonable. It'll all depend on how these are approved and finally resourced. We are hopeful that at least beginning next financial year, the full-fledged mission will be rolled out.
Varnita has led the technology team. Varnita, you want to say anything? Varnita, are you there?
No, I think whatever needed to be said about the platform has already been said. So there is one thing that I'd like to add, that we are in the process of creating a roadmap, or rather, like we said earlier, that the road ahead, as in there are certain challenges, certain opportunities, and we definitely look forward to feedback on the platform and suggestions on how and what we can do in this space, as in suggestions on how to go forward. Obviously, this is the start. This is just the first cut of the platform, like we mentioned, and we're reaching out to a wider community in order to understand how we can take this forward and get a good sense from different experiences and so on, like Dr. Sunita Krishnan mentioned about Synapse and so on.
Thank you, Varnita. And I guess Priya's last question is also related to that. And I think the CORNET members would be keen to stay connected. But Priya's question is also around incentives of sharing data for reuse. Essentially, all the CORNET members are collecting data right now. So have you thought about this? Is there anything you'd like to share?
Yeah. So, okay, I don't know where to start. But let me just say, what we think is, being a proponent of open data, we definitely need to kind of provide attribution, acknowledgement, and appreciation for the data that's been provided by people. And this, we will make it very, very clear. We'll shout from the rooftop saying this particular data is attributed. On the internet realm, there are very, very nice systems that do this, the Creative Commons licenses. So we think data must come out under Creative Commons licenses, especially data that's been kind of funded by the government, by taxpayers' money, by the government to do research, must come out into the public domain as public open data, maybe with a small moratorium period. And this is what I think. I think we need to have Creative Commons licenses, clear attribution to the data, but out in the public domain. No, no compromises on that. Any other incentives, they should, as academics, they should kind of, feel good that the data is reused and advances science. I don't know if I've kind of touched raw nerves, but that's my opinion.
Not at all. I think many of us share your passion and commitment to open data, open science. And so thank you so much for this inspiring work that you're doing. And I didn't realize Tejesh was also with us, and we'd love to have you, Tejesh, also talk about your work at a coffee hour in the future.
I saw Tejesh as well. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Great. I think we're at time. If one of you could drop in any specific email that the members can reach out to if they have further questions or thoughts around how they could contribute, that would be great. Thank you once again for I'm sorry, my internet went off. Thank you once again for sharing.
I think Babita is having some trouble. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Rajagopal. It was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. Goodbye. Okay.
So I did
you so
my
much.
email up on the chat. Or Prabhakar's mail is there. There are lots of mails, so you can write to any one of us. Right? Thank you.
Sure. We'll also share the emails in the summary document that we share with the members.
Okay.
So they
Great.
can reach out to you. Thank you so much for a great session.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.